And it feels like I have the impossible job. It's like actually the picture that Halima painted of a really complex system, lots of ideas being generated, and how do we then stick those ideas together to create something different? And that's quite a task. But actually, can you do it in 100 days? That's my job. And I love my job. But just to, I guess, give a bit more flavour of the picture that Halima created, the systems, particularly the health systems that we've been working in over the last 5 years, are incredibly complex, not because we're short of ideas. In fact, there's lots of ideas, but actually the ability for those ideas to be tested in real time and start to generate real results, I think the system struggled with for many, many years. And in part because that system is continually adapting and evolving, and the pace of change, I think, that we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years has actually increased rather than slowed down. And so what we're trying to do is basically fix a system that's moving at a frenetic pace. It's a bit like trying to fix a train when it's in motion. It's almost impossible. But before I dig into the detail about the method and give you an experience of the method, I just want a quick show of hands. Does anyone believe you can change a system in 100 days? Raise your hand if you believe you can. There's some believers out there, which is amazing. I'm going to ask you again at the end of the session. Hopefully there'll be more hands in the air as well. But just to give you a bit of a flavour of what this method looks like, but also just to give you a sense of where we've started to test it and what we've started to do. So a 100-day challenge is a method that starts to accelerate the pace of change, but also increase the ownership and agency of change at the front line. And we've been working over the last 5 years in over 29 health and care systems up and down the UK, tackling some of the most tricky complex challenges that we think the system's facing, ranging from improving care for the frail elderly and reducing unplanned admissions to radically rethinking children's services, which Chris and Jess are going to talk us through, to thinking about actually how do we generally help people live healthier, happier lives and shift lifestyles and behaviours. And I think over the 29 challenges we've done, we've continually adapted and built on our learning from our very first experience in Essex as well. So, but again, Chris and Jess will share some of that. But the method, again, starts from a very different starting point of here's a problem, how do we fix it? It's actually how do we create the right conditions for people closest to the action to drive change, generate ideas, and make the most of the knowledge and the capacity and the energy that sits within that system but seems to be stuck. And we use this wheel, which we call the conditions wheel, that starts to drive how we think about change and the conditions we start to create within systems to put the right support mechanisms in place. And I could literally spend 20 minutes, half an hour talking about each condition in turn, but the best way for you guys to understand it is to experience it. So I'm going to kind of short circuit this for you to experience it, and we'll come back to it a bit at the end. But just to give you a sense of what's involved, it's taking the best of different ways of thinking about leadership, thinking about how you use data to generate learning and real-time learning, also creating a bit of behaviour change using things like urgency and coaching support for frontline teams. But the main thing we always come back to is changing complex system isn't just about bottom-up change. It has to be both top-down and bottom-up. And our team work from supporting very, very senior leaders and decision-makers like yourself, Chris, to their senior management teams to help design and create the right conditions for change and make sure the teams are focusing on the right issues, to making sure we start to bring together frontline practitioners. And in health and care, it's typically GPs, secondary care, so hospital consultants, voluntary sector providers, people with lived experience, all coming together as a single unit to generate ideas and test them out in real time in 100 days. So in that way, it's change that is both top-down and bottom-up all at the same time. But most importantly, I kind of painted a picture of who's involved in these teams, but it's inclusive. It needs to make sure that we start to equalise the understanding and the power dynamics within these cross-system multidisciplinary teams so they can start to bring their expertise together to create something meaningful. But not just meaningful, so it's not about thinking about what they want to do. It's very much supporting those teams to take action, so focusing people on taking action and experimenting as a way to generate learning and results. But most importantly, I think, we pay attention to the human aspects of change. So it's not just about the ideas they generate, it's recognising that the process of change is a very human social experience, and that can be a bit up and down. So we create a bit of a rhythm through the 100 days that convenes these teams every 25 days to reflect on what they're doing, the progress they've made, success and failures, helps them revisit their plans, and then helps them go again. So we start to create a bit of a habit of action, learning, followed by action and learning. In that way, we start to generate a very different culture and practice around how we deliver care, but how we generate ideas and produce change. And I think from the very first 100-day challenge I did with Chris and Jess, actually 4.5, 5 years ago, the results that teams can generate is overwhelming. And just to give you a sense of some of the hard system metrics that these teams have generated, it's almost, to some extent, too good to be true. It's like 25% reduction in A&E attendances and 50% reduction in GP attendances. But it gives a sense to the system and people within that system of what's possible if they start to think differently about the problems they're facing. But most importantly, you can see the energy on the individual's face there. It starts to create a new energy and a motivation and a commitment for change, which is golden when you're thinking about the scale of transformation that systems are taking on in the longer term. So just to summarize it, and again, it's a really quick skip through the method, so we want to jump into you guys experiencing it. But one way to think about it is traditional approaches to change tend to focus on this stuff. It's have we got the right vision? Have we got the right goals and indicators? Have we got a strategy in place? All the tangible things that we know are important, and without that, actually, it's quite hard to give people the right focus and systems the right focus. And we tend to spend a lot of time thinking about the new shiny bubbles as well, and that can be technology, or it could be simply just reordering our policies and processes and plans. But all of that really, really struggles to take hold, particularly in complex systems, without that shift in mindset, behaviour, generating new knowledge, helping people to collaborate at a much, much deeper level. And so we tend to make sure we help systems, teams, frontline practitioners, senior decision makers see change in a much more holistic way. That's everything that drives the results that we've seen through these teams that's below the iceberg, that helps make the ideas and the plans a bit more effective.